What's going on, everybody? The SSR ticket is coming soon in probably about a month, and today I'm going to do a tier list of the servants you can choose from. Now, this is going to be just like an overall tier list, thinking of it as a holistic view. Of course, like each person's account needs is different, and let's say you have a whole bunch of AoE sabers, some of them are going to be ranked pretty high. But if you don't have like any, let's say you really need like a single target assassin, like obviously your account will need that more. So each person's account is different. I'm just going to give my thoughts on the servant sort of in their own world on how I think they are. And one thing to note is that even though you get to choose SSR, you still have to get them to Bond 5 and at least get them to the first Ascension before the 2-month period is over, or else you won't get to keep them, so make sure to do that. Also, if you have a favorite husbando or waifu, I'd say pick them. It's better to choose somebody who you like rather than gameplay-wise, even though gameplay can make you enjoy the game more. I'd still say get your waifu or husbando over gameplay. Just overall, you just want to have fun with the game. And with that being said, let's look at the first servant, who is Achilles. He is an AoE quick rider, and I think he's a pretty good servant just to start off in B tier. 30% MP charge, he has invincibility, quick and MP gain. He's pretty solid overall, just quick rider. He can loop under certain conditions. However, I think his NP gain is only 1 turn. So he does sort of need help if you want him to loop a lot. And with the arts meta coming in real soon, he sort of falls off a bit. But if you got Scotty, he can still work, especially if you want to plug suit somebody else in. He hits decently hard, a lot better than like other quick servants or rider servants like Astolfo, or I guess if you have Astolfo at higher MP levels you'd do better, but MP gain, it's pretty solid. Just overall solid servant to start off with. Next is Anastasia. She is a AoE archcaster, and I also think she's overall a B tier. I think she has pretty good MP gain. Arch MP I think is a 3 hit. She has ignore invincibility, really nice. Party wide attack, 50% charge. Gotta love 50% charge. And what I really wish she'd have more of is her arts buff. It's only a 1 turn duration. It is 50%, but still 1 turn, so it's a little rough. Also, sort of MP gain would be nice, even though Artoria can help cover that. Damage is a bit meh. Not bad, but really higher levels would be nice of her. Also, it's like a 60% chance to stun on her NP. Double check, or is that her skill? No, her skill, her MP is a skill steal. Okay, that's pretty nice. It is her 3rd skill that has a chance to stun, so whenever you pop that battery, remember, select the target for, 60% chance to stun. Overall, it's just a solid servant, you know. Need an arch casting looper with Castor in the future. Not a bad choice. Next, we got Arjuna. He is an AoE bust archer. He does some pretty solid damage. There's some things I really like about him, like his damage. He does a lot of damage. He does have charge return. He has the buster steroid. He has the MP damage steroid. He has charge, but his charge is 25%, and then 10% for every 5 turns after. So 35% is a pretty awkward charge amount. You'd like to see at something like a nice even 30 at least. He has crit star generation, which is it's a buster. it's a little awkward since he doesn't really have the skill that's like generates a whole bunch of stars. Except I guess his second skill is 5 stars, but that's not a whole lot per turn. I put him as a C overall. Like the archers are good, but archer is like such a strong class that even though he is good, there are better options as archer, I feel. So for that, I'll give him a C. And next is Artoria. She's gonna be the first one I put in S tier. Her buff this Annie is actually insane, and even before then she'd be like a strong A. But after her dragon reactor buff at Annie, it's pretty insane. So first skill, party-wide attack buff. Okay, pretty good. Third skill, 30% MP charge and 15 crit stars. Ooh, really, really good. Second skill, MP damage, Buster Steroid, and then after her anniversary buff, it changes all her command cards to Buster, and on top of that, one turn Buster Steroid is a lot of damage. Her MP gauge also refunds at a minimum of 20% depending on overcharge, and it hits a lot. You can, like, I used her this past like Lotto or in NA for winter, and she's a really, really good servant, and her buff at anniversary is totally unneeded, but they gave it to her anyway for the Fate Stay Night servants, and I think overall she is the strongest AoE saber at the moment, and for that, I give her an S tier. And coming in next is Altera. She is also an AoE saber, and unlike Artoria, where Artoria is a lot of like Unga Bunga card damage, and also like I guess you can sort of like loop with her with the 20%. Altera, she's more of a crit and sort of like utility in a weird way. Like her kit's kind of like a little bit all over the place where she doesn't excel at anything, I feel. First skill is an MP damage for the party, 20%, and removes all defensive buffs. So removing defensive buffs, pretty good. And her second skill acts as a star absorption, which is placed into the sort of crit roll and increases her own offensive buff, debuff resistance, and I guess it's fine for harder content. Her third skill is a crit bomb and attack steroid, so playing more into that crit roll, and her NP is it reduces damage or the defense for all enemies by 20%. So she has like some star generation, some like star absorption, but like not a whole bunch of stars she's generating. She has like party-wide support with her NP damage, but like her attack damage is like for herself only. So I don't know. Her skills are like sort of all over the place where she doesn't really excel at anything. That'll put her at C's. I think just get Saber. I think she's just a better version. Even though like removing like enemies' defensive buffs is really nice for some harder content. Like I guess she's more of like used for rather than farming more for like a harder content like story, but still solid. Next we have Scheherazade. Now she is another arts AoE caster like Anastasia, but she's not as offensive. She like provides some more utility, except if their enemy is a king attribute, like she will destroy them with her. That's what her MP is. It's a bonus damage against king servants, and oh boy, does that hurt. And her first skill is 30% charge, so not yet 50 like Anastasia's. It also is her art steroid, and it's only 30% compared to Anastasia's 50%. But she does drain, so sacrificing some of her own offensive stats for the drain can be nice. Second skill is a charm and increases her defense, and then her third skill is a party-wide gut. So she does have some sort of offensive capabilities, we know, with her charge, with her art steroid, but as well as some utility. Whereas Anastasia, it's all like pretty much for herself. She does, I guess Anastasia does have that 20% attack, but I think Drain and Party-wide Guts is really nice. And I think you can actually make her loop now. Like after her buffs, I think she can loop on with Castoria. So she's a pretty solid servant. Like on her release, she was definitely not as good, but after, getting some interludes, she's a pretty solid servant. I'll put in B tier. Next, we have Drake. She is an AoE Buster Rider, and she hits pretty hard. 50% charge. With her, she got a skill buff, so she now gets Buster as well as MP damage. And 50% chargers, just overall really great for farming. That's where you want to use her, and I think she's a pretty solid A tier servant. Maybe towards slightly going to B tier, like maybe in lower end of A, but she does a lot of damage, and I always respect that, especially for farming where a lot of the game is farming. I think she is a really useful servant if you already don't have a strong AoE rider. I would say getting Drake is a good call, and is probably who I would have picked up if I didn't just randomly get her on a ticket earlier this year. Next, we have Enkidu, who is a single target Buster Lancer, and Enkidu, he hits like a truck. I'm going to say right now, he's also on S tier because of just how much he hits. Like all the buffs he's gone past Babylonia, I think even currently, and not taking into account like any of his like niches or anything, just like if you just see how much a single target MP hits, I think his is the strongest in the game right now. And like I think it was like not even close. He also has a niche that deals extra damage by 200% to enemies with threat against humanity, with a chance to stun divine servants. First skill increases Buster performance and either quick or arts. It's a 50% chance for either. He has a evasion and reduces the enemy's critical attack for 3 turns. Or he removes evasion and also gets evasion on his second skill. So yoinks your evasion and also gets evasion for himself. Third skill recovers HP by 10,000 and clears own debuffs. Like Enkidu is somebody you can just sort of just throw in at the end of a party as long as it's not Saber. And no, Enkidu, he's gonna do work. Really, really good servant overall, I'd say. Next, we have Osakabehime, who is a sort of a quick and I guess kind of now Buster support. And her first skill is, a defensive buff for herself, debuff resistance for herself, and increases party's critical damage by 50% for 3 turns. So that's a pretty nice little buff there she got, and that does help her out quite a bit. Her second skill is a 20% targetable MP gauge and increases star generation by 50%. And third skill decreases enemies' defense and removes their buffs. Her MP increases party's defense and increases their own HP by up to 4,000 if it's MP5, so 2,000 MP1, and increases the party's arts and buster performance by 30% for 3 turns. So it's pretty nice. So she provides support because right now in JP, Buster can crit a lot because of Koyanskaya, just like boom, here's a bunch of stars. And the hard part is that her charge is only 20%. With Koyanskaya, you generally want to there for 3 turn farming. I guess you can use Koyanskaya for just general Buster critting, but if her first skill, MP gauge, was something like 50%, like target 50%, or maybe even like 20% now and like 10% per turn, I think she'd be in a lot better spot. But she's like wants to help like do crit damage, but with the current meta, I don't think she's like that great. She's fine, maybe for slower like Buster and quick chains. I think with Bazette actually she could be like really well. I haven't tried her out because I don't have a Bazette on JP. I do have a Osakabehime, but for now, at least right now, I'm gonna put her in D tier. I think I just haven't gotten to make her work, and teams where I do need like either that crit damage or like defense, I would just rather take a servant who really specializes in that. Like I don't think Osakabehime is a bad support. A lot of scenarios I'd rather take somebody else than her. Like I think you can make her work though, but you'd really have to plan around it and have a whole bunch of other servants. I think Bazette might actually work really well with her, but that's just a theory, a game theory. Next we have Jack, who is an absolute crit monster. She generates a ton of stars, single target assassin, who's quick, with a female damage sniff, so she does extra damage to females, and overall just a really solid single target assassin. If you need a single target assassin really badly, she's good at it. She generates a whole bunch of crit stars, does crit damage, has some survivability with an evade. Overall, assassins, they just unfortunately don't do a whole bunch of damage, but she generates a ton of stars, and I gotta respect that. Next is Jeanne. There are two Johns on this list, but there's only one John to choose from, and she's a really, really good just survivability for challenging content. Her first skill is star generation, 3 turns. It only at max rank it's only 9, and not a lot of stars. Her second turn though, or second skill, sorry, reduces enemy's defense, okay, for 1 turn, 20%, and then for 3 turns, another 30% decrease, and decreases their MP damage, which decrease their MP damage generally isn't useful because if the enemy's an MP, you're generally gonna die. So 30%, it's not a lot, but reduced defense is nice. Third skill, a chance to stun the enemies, except her stun is actually ignore stun resistance, which is super, super nice for challenging content. Her MP grants party-wide invulnerability for 1 turn, increases the party's defense, and removes all party's debuffs, so really nice overall kit. She has a ton of HP. Overall, if you need a servant for sort of challenging content, like a really strong defensive servant, I would say John's a really, really solid A tier. If you have somebody who, like a Merlin, and you want to pair Merlin up with Mash, like those two can like sort of fill the niche between John. But if you like doing a lot of challenging content and like let's say you love doing challenging quests, she's definitely an upper A. If you're somebody who like sort of just oonga boongas through like challenging content, it's like, oh, I use command seals or whatever, or like during lottos you just generally don't do all the challenge quests, she's definitely a lot lower. But overall, also I forgot to mention she's a ruler, so 50% damage reduction against most enemies, so she's hard to kill. She provides invincibility, clear C buffs, really good unit for survivability and challenging content. Next we have Karna, who is an AoE Lancer. First skills, MP seals, pretty nice for 1 turn. Second skill is a Buster and MP damage buff, so only 1 turn, which is a little sad. And it's only a 30% Buster steroid and 20% MP damage, so at least it's double dipping in multiplier, so that's nice at least. And a big problem with him, like Arjuna, only a 20% MP gauge. 25% is just such an awkward number to deal with. It does also increase star generation for 3 turns and increases crit damage for 3 turns. So, no, it's nice. And he is also double quick deck, so that does help out with his MP or with the star generation. And his MP, Buster MP deals damage to all enemies and reduces their Buster resistance by 20% for 3 turns. So, because of the reduces Buster resistance for 3 turns, you generally don't want to use him for farming, especially also with the 25%. He's generally there for sort of longer fights. And for that, put him in C tier, like 25% charge, just awkward. His steroid skills only last 1 turn. MP seal, though, is really nice. I'll give him credit for that. Next, we have Mordred, who is an AoE Buster Saber. Like she'll get it compared a lot with Artoria because they're both AoE Buster Sabers with 30% charges. First skill, 50% Buster Steroid, really nice. And her second skill, which recently got the buff, which is really, really good, increases her own Buster card star absorption. Okay. Increases own critical damage 3 times for 3 turns. And also 15% star bomb. So her Buster cards, she's going to generate 15 stars. Her Buster cards are going to absorb it up, and she's going to increase crit damage. Her final skill, MP gauge for 30%, removes own debuffs, and also increases her defense for 1 turn. MP is she deals AoE Buster damage, extra damage against Arthur enemies, and increases her own MP gauge on the back end. So really similar to Artoria. Okay, so Artoria, if you're looking at MP damage against general enemies that aren't saber faces, let's say, Artoria will do more damage. However, if the enemy is a saber face, Mordred will do more damage. Mordred also has the buff she recently got is really nice, and before that, clear-cut favorite between Artoria. Now, I would still pick Artoria now, but I'll say Mordred, like, her second skill buff where her Buster cards absorb those crit stars and increases her crit hit damage, it is a really nice buff. I would say before it, she'd probably be at B, but now I'm saying she's low A. She is a really good now. I'd say that buff was a really nice buff. And however, talking about Artoria Mordred, if you have one already, I would say go and you want like another, like more damage, I would say go for an MP2 of either rather than saying, unless you're collecting her, if you already have Artoria and she'll say she's MP1, I would say go for MP2 rather than if you're between Artoria and Mordred, go for that MP2 for that extra damage. Like that, I think would actually be more beneficial, like strictly gameplay wise, and saying I want this Mordred. You can sort of fill like that Buster crit niche or even just Saber crit niche somewhere else. I think, especially for if you're looking at lotto wise, when you're farming like for lottos, I think it's way more beneficial to have that extra damage on the MP2 rather than a new servant. All right, next we have Nightingale, who is a Berserker Buster support. It's pretty weird scenario, I guess. Her first skill, heals an ally 4,000, grants some debuff immunity 3 times for 3 turns, and instant kill immunity 1 time for 3 turns. Not often so you're gonna die to instant death, but no, there's some fights where it's helpful to have. Her second skill, I wish it was targetable. What it is increases her own damage against humanoid enemies for 3 turns and increases her defense against humanoid enemies for 3 turns. If this is targetable, completely different story. However, it is for herself. She is a Berserker, but she's definitely played a role as a support more. So I think it being on herself hurts her a lot. Third skill, 50% Buster Steroid for 3 turns on an ally. That's super, super nice. 50% Buster Steroid is huge. And her MP is an Arts MP and reduces all enemies' attack 50% for only one turn, unfortunately. Clears party debuffs and heals the party by 5,000 HP. So she focuses a lot on healing the party, but she is a berserker and she will die quickly. There are a lot of enemies that are humanoid, so her second skill does have that survivability for her, but she's still a berserker. She's still gonna get hit a lot and take a lot of damage. And if you use like her first skill's healing on her, and you want to use it for, you know, your allies. You want to heal. She's a support. You want to heal your main damage dealer. And she has double arts, so that does help, but I don't know. I'm gonna put her. I just think there are better supports, both crit wise and healing wise, out there that I would take over Nightingale. Next, we have the archer Orion. Now, Orion is a single target anti-male archer. And I'll be straight up with you. Right now, Orion needs some love. I think it's still true where Uriel at MP5 will out damage an Orion. And whenever a 3-star just out damage a 5-star in like anti-male archer arts niche, like that's Orion needs some sort of love. Uriel also just costs less to like level up and invest into. And Orion, no, she does have some help, you know, or she has like an evasion, own crit damage for 3 turns, but I don't know. Overall, I'd say just, especially for newer players, just level up your Uriel rather than picking Orion if you're looking for the anti-male niche. For that, I'm gonna put her D, sadly. Next is Ozymandias, single target Buster Rider. Now, his MP, it doesn't deal the most damage. I'll say that right now. You have to land like his Imperial Privilege, which is his second skill, which increases his own attack by 40%, which is huge for 3 turns. Only 60% chance, and if you miss it, well, sucks. However, that's where his third skill comes in, and where I think he's really, really helpful, where it increases the party's buff success rate for 1 turn by 40%. So 40%, 60%, 100%. And it's party-wide. Buff success chance, like, that is a huge buff to have on a skill, and for 40%, that alone makes him really, really useful. Even though like the flat charge on his third skill, that scaling to 40% for the buff success chance is huge. He also has a party-wide charisma, 18%, and not much to write home about. His MP also MP seals, so utility with the MP seal. He has survivability with his second skill that also attack and defense on second skill. But the big thing for me is his third skill, which is a 20% MP gauge for everybody, and the 40% buff success rate. And for that skill alone, or I guess not alone, but a huge reason why I'm putting him in A tier. Next, we have Napoleon, who is an AoE Buster Archer. His first skill increases the party's attack for 3 turns by 20% and increases his own attack by 20% for 1 turn. So, general attack stuff. Nice to have. Second skill increases the party's MP damage 20% for 1 turn and increases critical star generation for 1 turn. Buster, it's not quick. If he was quick, that would be really nice, but kind of a supporter role. It's team wide. Third skill increases his own MP gauge by 30%. Ignores invincibility for 3 turns. Nice. And also crit stars for 3 turns. And it's 10 crit stars per turn. MP ignores defense. Pretty nice. And gains 20 crit stars. So deals damage to all enemies. So he's if you MP with him, boom, 20 stars on top of his 10 stars per turn you're getting on his second skill, or his third skill, sorry. So, he can generate a whole bunch of stars. What he's really missing is a crit damage buff, like on one of his skills. Maybe if they threw that into an interlude on his first skill, that would be really, really nice. If you need an AoE archer, I think Napoleon is probably the best one to get from this ticket, and it's why I put him in B tier. However, I would say if you can, wait for either Ishtar or Gilgamesh. I think those two are better AoE buster archers. But if you really need a buster AoE archer now, I think Napoleon is a fine option to choose. I just think Ishtar and Gilgamesh are that much better. And if you want to roll for, or if you're planning to roll for them later down the line, I would say hold off and don't choose Napoleon now. But Napoleon is a fine option to settle on, I'd say. Next, we have Xiang Yu, who is an AoE buster / quick servant, AoE servant. First skill, gives himself evasion, increases his own crit damage for 1 turn, and also increases his star absorption for 1 turn. So it always sucks whenever a servant's survivability is also tied to like their damage, which is his star absorption and crit damage. So that's always a bit of an eh. Second skill increases his quick and buster performance 30% for 3 turns, and also increases crit damage 50% for 1 turn. No, nice skill to have. I wish the crit damage was for 3 turns, but 2 different skills with his crit damage. And his third skill is gains crit stars for 3 turns, and also ignores invincibility for 3 turns. And his MP, it just deals damage to all enemies and increases his own MP damage as his overcharge effect. So he hits like a truck. Or let me rephrase that. His crit can hit like a truck. The issue is he is a triple buster deck with only 1 quick card. His MP is quick, and he does have like some star generation 3 per turn, but he's a berserker, so he can die really quick. His survivability is tied to his star absorption, which is so that's always especially with the berserker, that hurts him even more. And I don't know, I just think there are other better AoE berserkers with like star absorption survivability. Like if he had a star generation skill, maybe, I don't know, on his third skill, if that was like something, but and you can like NP, and then like his MP will generate a whole bunch of stars, so you can use those for next turn for the crits for critting. That'd be a lot nice, but I think there are other better AoE berserkers out there, but he's still not bad. AoE berserker. He also doesn't have charge though. He's like low C, high D for me. He's not a bad option, but I think you could do better. Next, we have Bradamante, who is an AoE art / quick lancer. Her first skill increases her own quick and art performance 30% for 3 turns. Second skill gives her guts 1 time 3 turns and increases her own defense for 30%. Her third skill, 20% targetable charge and removes their debuffs, pretty nice. And her MP deals damage to all enemies, 60% chance to stun them, and reduces their crit damage, or reduces their critical hit attack chance by 20%. So chance to hit you with the crits less. Weird way to say it, but voice is slowly dying. So she's another kind of her MP doesn't deal a lot of damage. I'll say that right now. Animation, very, very cultured, but doesn't do too much damage. Her deck is 2 quick, 2 art, so reverse skill does help her in that sense. And also the removes debuffs is really nice on her targetable MP gauge. Issue is, again, like a lot of these tournaments where she's like kind of like selfish, where like her buffs are for herself. But like at this end, she has like guts and her own defense, but she doesn't deal all that much damage. I think she needs like this, maybe on her third skill, if it gave like an MP damage modifier, that would help out a ton. Where she can give her own self like some more damage, as well as also possibly be a better defensive unit, or I guess supportive unit. She's not generally somebody who can loop very well. You want her to we want to bring her similar to like Arjuna and like stuff, where you don't want to bring her during farming situations. You want to bring her for more of those long drawn out fights where you're going to be trying to MP multiple times, where you need the stun, or the enemies can debuff you and you want the cleanse. So she has her place. I just would like to see a little bit more love for her. She definitely needs it. For that, I'll put her C tier. Next, we have Jeanne, who is an Moon Cancer AoE servant who is also an absolute tank. So Moon Cancer, neutral damage from a lot of enemies. Right off the bat, she has a huge HP pool. And her first skill increases the party's NP gauge 20%, increases everybody's attack for 3 turns by 20%, and 5 crit star generation buff for 3 turns. So party wide, 5 crit stars, party wide attack, and party wide MP gain. Pretty solid. Second skill, she basically taunts enemies, reduces the damage she takes by 1,000 per 1 turn, and increases her own attack by 30%. Very nice. Especially with her being super tanky, and then also with her third skill where it grants invincibility that's targetable for 1 turn, increases their own MP generation, and the demerit is they're skilled sealed, so you want to do it at the very end after they use all of your allies' buffs and skills. You want to apply the invincibility at the end, so you're like, haha, I already used all my skills. And her NP reduces all enemies' defense by 30% for 3 turns, and grants invincibility for self for 1 turn. So she has a whole bunch of team-wide utility with the MP charge, increased attack, and crit stars. She's also an absolute tank where she can taunt and give herself invincibility. She also decreases enemy's defense by 30%, or I guess, is it 30? Yeah, 30% for 3 turns. And gives herself some invincibility, so she's just really hard to kill. She provides some pretty solid team-wide utility. And it's just a really good tank unit to have, especially for like any sort of like challenging like story content. Because the units just are out there and like, you know what? I want you to provide some team utility, but also be a little bit greedy and just keep surviving for yourself. I think she's, not great for farming, but for like this general like story content or challenge content, she's really good to have. For that, put her B tier. She definitely solid unit to have. Next, we have Europa, who is a Buster AoE rider. She gets a lot of comparisons to Marie because of her survivability, and she doesn't hit as hard as somebody like Drake, but she has the survivability though to back it up. First skill gives her invincibility for 3 attacks, debuff resistance also. Second skill, arts and buster performance by 30%, and increases her own MP gauge for 30%. Really nice. And her third skill, 60% chance to charm all enemies for 1 turn, reduces her defense for 3 turns, and reduces her crit hit chance for 3 turns. MP is a deal all damage to enemies and increases her own defense for 50% for 1 turn. So she can deal some like decent damage, with their Buster and Art steroid. She has 30% charge, love it, and she has invincibility. She can increase her own defense. Like she's gonna be like really hard to kill, and she can like if you just keep letting her live, like she will put out damage. She is a pretty solid unit to have. She's not like super hard farming niche like Drake is. But no, she can do some damage if you have a higher enough MP level. Like, she'll clear waves. She also has survivability. I guess I always put the higher damage and this is just my personal thing, but I always put like the higher damage and like MP gauge higher up in priority because I think farming is a large majority of the game. And Europa, she's still good. Like, I'm putting her B tier, but I think for like survivability, like you can sort of substitute in a more offensive minded and pair with a supportive servant to like keep them alive. Like Europa, she can do it all. She's like pretty self sufficient, and like that's why solid B tier. Like, she's a solid servant all around. Next we have Tamamo. Now, I know Castoria. It's a big thing. She's coming this anniversary. The arts like loopy meta is here. Tamamo, she has art support. I'm still putting her in S tier. Reason being, Castoria's weakness, she doesn't heal at all. There's no like drain. Like Castoria, she's great for looping. She gets the damage. She has hard survivability. However, there's no healing anywhere in her kit, and I think Castoria and Tamamo paired up together make a deadly combination. Like, Tamamo is still really, really good, and paired with Castoria, those two are like it's like peanut butter and jelly. Like, they're great together. They can be great separate, but together, they're really, really good for like challenging content. Like, Tamamo, I think's still really, really good art servant to have. All right, that was a terrible analogy, but let's talk about our skills real quick. Her first skill, MP drain, super nice, and also increases the party's MP damage by 30%. So MP damage steroid, good. Increases her own defense by 30% for one turn and another 30% for 3 turns. So she has survivability for herself. Her third skill is a 50% art steroid for 3 turns and increases the healing, or it heals him for 2500 right there. So healing and art steroid, very nice. And her MP is reduces party's cooldown by 1, really good, and recovers the party's HP by 2000, and charges the party's MP gauge by 25%. So she's got the healing, she's got the skill cooldown decreasing, she has survivability for herself, she can MP drain, increase MP damage. Really, really good art servant or art support to have, and especially for challenging content. There was so many times where I don't have Tamamo on my JP account, and I just go in with double Castoria if I can't find a Tamamo, because that's all what the caster support is. And there's so many times where I'm like, I need some healing. Oh, I don't have healing. And if I had Tamamo, it'd make some of the challenging content so much easier and so much nicer. Tamamo, I still S tier. I know people are gonna be like, but Castoria, you don't need Tamamo anymore. No, Tamamo is still an excellent arts support to have. Next, we have Vlad, who is an AoE arts berserker, and I think he's gotten some really good buffs lately, and I'll talk about this in a second. But first skill reduces the enemy's MP gauge by 1 and increases his own MP gauge by 30%. So drain and gain. His second skill increases his own attack and defense by 30% for 3 turns. Pretty nice. His third skill, which I like a lot, it grants him guts for 1 time, 1 turn. It gives him a second guts 1 time for 5 turns and increases his MP gain by 30%. I like that a lot. And his MP, which has been buffed twice, it deals damage to 1 enemy and it reduces their art resistance by 20% for 3 turns and gains 20% or 20 crit stars. So for any sort of like challenging content, Vlad's a monster. He has the survivability, he has the MP gain, he has drain, he has attack and defense buffs, he has reduced his art resistance. So A lot of the challenging content is pairing with like a Castorian Tamamo. You got heals, hard survival. Like it's like it is a really, really deadly combination. As long as they don't remove his buffs, like he's really good. Not great for like looping, but for like challenging contact, if you have the arts supports to support him up, he's insane, I think, right now. And somebody who I'm really considering, it's either him or Anastasia. Anastasia because waifu reasons, but Vlad, gameplay wise, I think he's really, really good, and I give him A tier now. After all his buffs, I think he's super good. Next, we have Waiver. Whenever he first came out, everybody was like, the waiver ticket. This is the waiver ticket. If you don't have waiver, like my JP account, I chose a waiver because everybody knows what he does. 50% charge, increases attack, increases defense, increases critical damage. And his MP is a chance to stun. It's a drain. It's curse, I think, or curse or poison. I forgot what the technical term is, but if you need 50% charging support, and I think everybody should have at least two, like a minimum, like having two at least 50% charging supports is so useful for farming setups. I think if you have like a Scotty and a range though, you can pass on waiver. I'm gonna say that right now. Waiver's still nice to have because of his MP. No, the drain and chance to stun, and I think actually decrease defense too. Like that is super nice. But for farming purposes, which is the main reason why people choose waiver nowadays, it's a 50% charge. And if you have Scotty and Reigns, or even Castor in the future, I think waiver could actually use some buffs too. Like he needs something that differentiates him from sort of the other 50% charge supports. He's been so good for so long, and I still think he is super good, and I still have him in S tier right here. I think he could still, use some love with some of the other supports that are coming out in JP recently. Still, everybody needs 50% charge supports, and I'd still recommend waiver if you don't have him. And finally, we have Xuanzang, who is a single target buster caster. And her first skill increases her MP gauge by 80% and increases MP damage 20% for one turn. Second skill is she gives herself taunt and reduces damage taken and increases party's attack by 20% for 3 turns. Super nice. Third skill, MP generation for 3 turns, critical star generation for the party for 3 turns, and party debuff immunity for 1 turn. NP deals damage that ignores enemies' defensive buffs, and it's quite a lot. And Xuanzang, this might be a little controversial, I don't know. I think she's an S tier servant. Reason being, when a pen's come out, it's 20%. If you max out her, I think second pen it is? Yeah, second pen. That's 20% charge. Her first skill gives her 80%, so you can bring like a Black Grail. Boom, 100% charge if you have her first skill and second pen skill leveled up. And there are a lot of raids out there where you can bring like a Black Grail, or bring like, if there's like a damage CE, boom, she will destroy like any sort of like raids, or even like before the Coin Skya meta comes, or even I guess post coins. Like right now, like there's the current JP lotto where I'm struggling to kill the middleweight because it has a high HP pool that my AoE Morgan can't really kill it, and it can cause some scuffed non-3 turns. There's gonna be waves like that in like this lotto, future lottos, where you bring the Xuanzang. A lot of damage, ignores defense, 100% right out the bat. Bring a Black Grail. Tons of damage. I think she is super, super good, and is somebody I'm really glad I have on my NA account, especially at MP2. She's helped me out a lot. And I think some people sort of underrate in a way. Anyways, this is sort of my tier list overall. I'm pretty happy about it. Let me know who you disagree with or agree with. There's probably going to be some, definitely, not everybody's going to agree with this. There's going to be people arguing, like, this is just like my personal list from servants I've used. Like, this is from my own experience. And, you know, of course, waifu or husbando reasons. Choose who you want. And also, it's everybody's account's different and unique. So, you know, like how I said earlier, if you have like a range Scotty, you're gonna get Castoria. Waiver could definitely go down on like the tier list for your personal account, but this is sort of a generic sort of overall tier list of who I think people should get, or at least like look into in my tier list. I hope I gave like a good enough reason for each servant, like when you would want to get them. There's some servants like Osakabehime and Nightingale where I had a hard time like arguing for them just because I haven't used them a ton. And I just think that there are sort of like better servants overall you can pick. But hey, there's definitely, each of these servants has their reasons, their own niches where they excel at, and you can use them really well. Anyways, my voice is dying. If I can just hear it dead. And yeah, let me know what you think. What servants you'd have at different rankings and who you're going to choose with your ticket. I hope this helped, and thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Later.